Well, as you stroll through parts of downtown Knoxville, you likely have no clue that you're passing places that are pivotal in the history of American literature. Our scruffy city has inspired authors, either born or bred here, to write some of the most well-known novels, plays, and poetry. They are classics, spanning the modern era to days gone by. They're authors among the greats. The captivating plots, fabled characters, and powerful prose make them unique. But there is one detail that binds their stories together in literary history: Knoxville.
No one described this place more fully than Cormac McCarthy did.
Historian Jack Neely calls the city a literary place of sorts, so much so that he researched and wrote a walking guide that meanders through downtown, Fort Sanders, North and East Knoxville, the backdrops for authors, journalists, playwrights, and poets.
I wanted to write for the people who visit Knoxville to see where these places are that they can visit, but also wanted to remind Knoxville that there are these points of interest, and also maybe get even kids interested in these books, because this is what's set here. Market Square, by the way, is the most literary place in East Tennessee that I know of.
Neely says this bustling heart of the city is a scene setter in a handful of well-known novels. Among them, James Agee's Pulitzer Prize-winning A Death in the Family. In the 1957 novel, the Knoxville native describes the odd, shaky light of Market Square. Those words inscribed there today. Nearby, a plaque celebrates Adolph Ochs, the influential publisher of the New York Times, whose career in journalism started at the Knoxville Chronicle as a paperboy. And across the square, Neely points to another literary locale.
Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, lived in that building down on the corner. She lived in the Oliver Hotel when she finished writing the book. In fact, when she named the book, she was living there.
East of downtown, a larger-than-life nod to Alex Haley, the author of the acclaimed novel Roots, called Knoxville home in his latter years. Internationally lauded poet Nikki Giovanni spent her youth in then-segregated Knoxville, visiting her grandparents at 400 Mulvaney Street, which inspired one of her noted essays.
This is a literary site in Knoxville history.
It's nothing more than a rectangle carved in the concrete underneath the Hill Avenue Viaduct. But in Cormac McCarthy's Suttree, it's home to one of its central characters, Gene Harrogate.
This is where he lived. This is what is known as Harrogate's refuge, Harrogate's retreat, Harrogate's lair. But this was, until just 5 or 6 years ago, this was just an open hole.
McCarthy grew up in Knoxville and attended UT. So did novelist David Madden. As a teen in the 40s, he worked at the Bijou Theater. His novel, Bijou, caught the attention of another literary standout.
In fact, even Stephen King wrote an essay for the New York Times about Bijou, about how people shouldn't pay attention to his work as much as David Madden's. He thought David Madden was a better writer than Stephen King was.
Before it was the Bijou Theater, this building on Gay Street was the Lamar House, home to Frances Hodgson Burnett, one of the most well-known authors during the Victorian era. Her works include The Secret Garden and The Little Princess. She
and her family stayed here for a short time, and her brother was a bartender exactly right where the bistro is in the 1860s and 70s.
The final resting place of Hodgson Burnett's brother and mother is the Old Gray Cemetery on Broadway. Not far from their worn headstone is the gravesite of Joseph Mabry and his son, who were gunned down on Gay Street in 1882 by a disgruntled banker.
Mark Twain was so impressed with this story of 3 men shooting each other simultaneously that he included an account of it in Life on Mississippi, his most famous work of nonfiction.
Standing tall in Old Gray, the grave of former Tennessee Governor Parson Brownlow, better known as the editor and writer of the Civil War-era paper, the Knoxville Whig.
It became popular in the North. People in Massachusetts even would subscribe to it because of part of the humor value, the outrageous things he would say about the Confederates, and people loved to quote his insults.
Across the cemetery is the burial plot of the prominent Williams family. Among them, the grandparents and father of famed 20th century playwright Tennessee Williams. He drew inspiration for his first play from his sister Rose and Aunt Ella, who owned a gift shop in downtown Knoxville.
but she also had on sale, and she actually gave it to her niece, Rose Williams, a set of glass figurines that became the source of the glass menagerie.
They are the stories of storytellers that dot Knoxville's landscape. From Old Gray to Market Square to Morningside Park, Neely, a writer himself, hopes the reader who tours the sites walks away with a greater appreciation.
Not only appreciate Knoxville, but to appreciate its literature in general and Knoxville's place in literature.
And the Knoxville Walking Literary Guide is free. It's available at Visit Knoxville, the Knox County Library, and the Knoxville History Project. You can find much more about that and authors who had an impact and made an impact on Knoxville right now at WBIR.com.